Hi, I'm Ben, and today I am talking Avatar Fire and Ash, which is my last review of the year 2025. And I'm very excited to talk about this film, everything that I thought watching it, and why these films have been quite rewarding for me, and also why it took me a little bit longer of a time to do this review. I didn't get to see Avatar Fire and Ash right away. I had to wait about 10 days, and it was a decision that my girlfriend and I made. We wanted to see it together. We were waiting to go see it until she got back from the holiday. And we went to a theater 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning, packed house to go experience Avatar Fire and Ash. That's the way James Cameron intended this movie to be seen, and it worked in the biggest of biggest formats. 3D of this movie is just absolutely gorgeous. And I wanted to talk about so much of the naysayers about this franchise. There's been this online reoccurring joke that nobody talks about or cares about the Avatar films. You hear it every time a new movie is about to be released. There's no cultural imprint at all. Yet, whenever these movies come out, they end up making billions of dollars. People love them. The audience reviews are very positive. The critic reviews are generally very positive. And then you go to some place like Disney World, and Pandora is filled to the brim with people. So much so that they're bringing it to Disneyland, where Disneyland is now going to have its own version of Pandora. And you keep seeing that and hearing that, and you're like, okay, so clearly people obviously enjoy being in this world. Why is that? Why is that we can have such a huge relationship with this movie in the theaters, but not in the way that other franchises are, like Star Wars or like DC or like Marvel. We don't see Avatar toys outside of a few Lego sets for The Way of Water, which I'll be honest, I quite like a few of those sets. But we don't see like people typically wearing shirts. And I don't really see anyone wearing Avatar shirts. I own one, I want to point that out. But you don't see anything. You don't see like posters in dorm rooms. Like I had a poster of Star Wars in my dorm room. You don't see McDonald's tie-ins. You don't see Fortnite collaborations like you do with other movies, some even a little bit more obscure than Avatar. Like One Battle After Another had a tie-in to Fortnite. Same with Kill Bill. You don't really see that with Avatar. And I think that gives this idea or illusion that Avatar just isn't really in the mainstream, that no one cares about it, that no one talks about it. And then you see the box office results and you're like, okay, this isn't just like an Asian phenomenon that's making this film gross $2 billion. Audiences around the world are eating it up. And here's my theory for that. Here is why these movies are so damn popular. I believe Avatar represents the purest form of cinema entertainment at the movie theaters, which is movie theaters are a bit expensive now. It's not like the cheapest thing to go out and see a movie. And if you're going to pay like $20 to go see something, you might as well make it worth your money. For Avatar, you get a 3.5 hour guaranteed spectacle that looks great on the big screen. How many other movies can guarantee you that? You get like Christopher Nolan every few years. You get some of these auteurs like Greta Gerwig or Jordan Peele who can usually deliver a good bang for your buck, but nothing quite like the scale of what James Cameron does. And I think what works about it is the structure of the story of Avatar that is very much the same in the first movie to Way of Water to now Fire and Ash. These movies are Jake Sully and the Neytiri family exploring this action packed world of Pandora. And what Cameron does as a filmmaker is he puts a world first approach to the storytelling. Pandora is the reason people want to watch these movies. And James Cameron knows that very well as a director. And going into Fire and Ash, I had a level of expectations of the story development because, one, again, I am a fan of this franchise. I have an actual relationship with these characters and want to see how James Cameron develops them in Fire and Ash. I have that, and I have a feeling a lot of people do have that relationship with these movies. However, if you didn't, you don't need to have that relationship. You can completely enjoy the Avatar films separate from each other. By that, I had my experience enhanced by caring and The Way of Water being my favorite film within this franchise, I found Fire and Ash a really nice continuation of that story. And that worked for me. But that's not necessary for everyone watching this. This if this is your first Avatar film, you can get into the story very quickly. It's pretty instantaneously. All you need to understand, which they set up at the very beginning, is a family grieving the loss of their son who are on the run from humans who view Jake Sully as a traitor for choosing the Na'vi people over humans. And since his children are Na'vi but also have a bit of Jake Sully in them and have that humanity and human qualities with them, they have something a little bit more unique. They have this connection to both Na'vi and the human ways. And it makes them interesting characters, to say the least. That's really it. It's not rocket science to follow the Avatar franchise. And I think that's what makes it quite popular. The fact that you can just go into Fire and Ash blind, not having seen any of the films, and on a visual level, you're going to understand and appreciate it. But on a storytelling level, I don't think you're going to be lost for that long. I think maybe you'll have to, have that, be able to adapt to who these characters are. But generally, I don't think it's anything so complicated that you'll ever feel lost and not with this story. And think about how different that is than all other films coming out today that are big studio entertainment, that are franchise films. Take like the MCU. If you just jumped into Thunderbolts, you'd be kind of lost. If, God forbid, you're about to just jump into Avengers Doomsday without seeing any of the other MCU characters, without knowing the relationship with Robert Downey Jr., without knowing Chris Evans returns, without seeing any of the X-Men films that feature Magneto, that feature Professor X, without seeing the TV shows, without seeing Phase 4 and Phase 5, which are largely derived. All this, without that knowledge, Doomsday is probably just not going to work for you, and it's going to be a little bit of a confusing clusterfuck. I think that's the exact opposite of Avatar. You really don't need that relationship with this movie. Think of something like Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Star Wars is, a story that is built on each other. And now for the case of Mandalorian and Grogu, which they showed the trailer before Avatar Fire and Ash for that movie, you have the new Mando and Grogu, which is a continuation of season 1 through 3 of that series. Plus, it's a continuation of the movies, specifically episodes 4 through 6, but also ties in through 7 and 8 and 9. But it also has ties into the Book of Boba Fett, because, by the way, if you haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett, you will not understand the transition between Mandalorian Season 2 and Season 3. These are all base knowledge you have to go into now with Mandalorian and Grogu. And I think a lot of audiences can and have that because these franchises are so big and popular. But it definitely feels a little bit harder to penetrate. For instance, I can't really bring my grandma to go see MCU installment number 40. I brought her to Spider-Man Homecoming and she was lost. But I could probably bring her to Avatar Fire and Ash, and she might not like it. She might not really care for this story. But she'd get the gist of the story pretty easily. And I think that's a huge difference. I think there is an accessibility that one goes throughout different languages, so it doesn't feel as tied to anything or as tied down, and it doesn't have that baggage. But it also makes it just very easy to jump into. There was a few decades ago where movies weren't like this. Now, I should say, I grew up in the 21st century. I was born in 1998. Movie going has been largely like this. Built on stories, continuation. But before that, that's not really how movies and sequels came out to be. Look at Jame Cameron's career in particular. Cameron understands that people go into a movie blind often, even if it's the second or third of a franchise. That's not always the greatest way to see it, but for instance, you can go see Terminator 2 and Aliens. For instance, I saw Terminator 2 and Aliens before I saw Terminator and Alien. Let me know in the comments below, but I have a feeling a lot of you also experienced these films that way. A lot of us probably watched T2 for the first time before we saw the Terminator. And I loved T2 and I understood T2 when I watched it. Same with Aliens. I think Avatar has that same feeling where you can watch it and it's accessible. And I think that's what makes it a global phenomenon. And I think it's why people rush out to the movies to see it. But what I love about Fire and Ash is what it does in its storytelling. Obviously, as I talked about, this is a very world driven movie. While the plotting and characters themselves feel very familiar, James Cameron is not reinventing the wheel with his characters. They are hero archetypes in here. It is good guys versus bad guys. And what that does is it allows us to not get bogged down by the story of the movie and essentially allows the world of Pandora to be the story and dictate the story. It's why something like the Tulkuns, who are the whale characters within the Avatar series, which I just have to say, I love the whale stuff in Way of Water, and I love it in Fire and Ash. It's continuously my favorite element of these movies, and I think it works. But it's a reason that these whale characters feel like the most developed characters, because honestly, they are. It's what James Cameron, as a director, as a storyteller, is most interested in. You have this character of one of the Tulkuns, Payakan, who's treated with respect in the storytelling and has an actual human character arc in it. Every detail of Pandora isn't there just to fill the screen with imagery. It's thought out and it tells you a history and significance to this world and this culture of Pandora. It's not just there for plotting, but it allows the world to feel fully realized. Now, the reason I'm wearing this Star Wars shirt is because I think when Star Wars is at its best, that's what it does. In Star Wars, it's just populated with Jawas, Tusken Raiders, Bothans, like all of these creatures that just make the world feel more alive. That's what Avatar does, and it does it very well. What James Cameron has realized in his mind and put to screen is an entire ecosystem that is living, that is interacting with itself. It has its own history, has its own culture, has its own understanding of how that world practices. That's my favorite stuff in Lord of the Rings. That's my favorite stuff in Star Wars. It's this mythology, it's this understanding of this world fully realized. Visual effects don't exist for sole spectacle in Avatar. Now, trust me, they are spectacle, and they're beautiful spectacle. They are incredible to behold, especially in 3D. But they are directly tied to the narrative, and they reflect themes within the movie. All the visual ideas within Avatar, or all the visual effects in this movie, tied to the idea of Pandora. This connection of life within this world, this interconnectiveness, how it all works and flows together. That is what this film is exploring. That is what this franchise has done very successfully well, which I think really resonates with people. And it's very easy to get lost in this world, I find. When I'm in the movie theater, I just kind of feel like I am in Pandora, which is a pretty tough feat. But I think some films can do that. Star Wars, when it's done great, I feel like I'm in the world of Star Wars, or I feel like I'm in the world of Tolkien. That stuff is done, when it's done well, it's done excellently. And I think Avatar does it excellently. And then what this film also tries to do in Fire and Ash, which I think it does so successfully, is how it introduces new elements with each film. In this one, the new element is the Mangkwan clan, also known as the Ash People, who reside in the volcanoes of Pandora. And the lead actress for this clan is Oona Chaplin, the granddaughter of Charlie Chaplin. She plays a character named Varang, who, her and her tribe, they're hardened by volcanic disaster, and thus they reject Aiwa, who is the deity and consciousness of Pandora. Again, this sounds complicated when you watch the world. You kind of understand, okay, this is kind of their version of the Force, or this connection to how we call it God, however you want to interpret it. But it is this connection to the world known as Iwa. What this element does, and I think it does very smartly in this movie, is this is a whole different culture and understanding within Pandora that grows audiences' understanding of Pandora's way of life, the different cultures, their different spirituality, their different cultural connection to the world itself. I find that watching this movie very exciting and cool, where it just feels so thought out and well researched is the wrong word because obviously this is a completely made up world, but thought out completely. I really enjoy watching somebody bring something to life and have every little detail that it feels like there could be an encyclopedia for every little detail. To me, that's just like it hits while watching a movie where I'm just like, oh my God, like, how does someone come up with this? How does somebody think of this? Opposite of this volcanic tribe, we get the Stephen Lang character returning from the first two films. And I think these two characters make for a very memorable antagonist. This is definitely my favorite of the antagonists within this franchise. Again, it's the same antagonist movie after movie. Adding this new element, adding this new dynamic to this film really worked for me. And then, of course, what James Cameron does better than anybody else is action spectacle. It's it's his cup of tea. He's one of the best directors in terms of understanding how to stage an action sequence, where to put the camera, what to show. That's what James Cameron does, and he does it kind of incredibly in this movie. The amount of detail for everything going on is spectacular. Who comes in when that character comes into a fight. The explosions, how well they're realized and rendered on screen. The 3D quality, which again, one of the reasons these movies make so much money is because people want to go see these movies in 3D. It's the greatest experience watching these movies in 3D. I find them so cool. But again, it's just other things. James Cameron is somebody who has always been able to write badass female characters. You've seen it in Terminator, you've seen it in Aliens. He does it again with Zoe Saldaña in the Avatar films. But then there's just so much other stuff. How he brings in World War II action set pieces, I guess you could say, like kamikazes, into the world of Avatar and Pandora. It's just so rich with detail. It's so well thought out. Every action scene feels grand. Now, I will say one of my complaints about this movie is there is a real familiarity to The Way of Water, which means that I found some of the action set pieces to feel a bit repetitive from what they are in The Way of Water. That doesn't lessen my enjoyment per se, but I found the action from Avatar to The Way of Water to feel very different. The Way of Water and Fire and Ash feel very similar. And I like that as a continuation. I was hoping for a little bit more. These films can kind of feel separated, where this one does feel like it is building off the action of the second and third film. Again, not a huge complaint for me, just something that I noted where I was hoping to see some different elements of James Cameron's direction style because I think he has so much in his mind for that. With that, some of that repetitive quality to this almost 3.5 hour movie can feel a little repetitive in its staging. So there are moments like that that I don't think this movie is perfect. Like I said, The Way of Water is my favorite of these films. Fire and Ash and the first Avatar, they're probably about the same for me. But what I love about these movies, and this is really the thesis of this video, and the reason I love these movies, is because, again, this feeling of waiting to go see this movie with my girlfriend, planning it out, and then after seeing it, deciding, like, okay, we'll probably go see this in IMAX, or we might see this in 4DX as well. And our conversations after going to see the movies are always like, oh, how cool was this scene? Or, oh, that was awesome, blah, blah, blah. Where a lot of our conversations after Thunderbolts is like, wait, so who was this character? What was this? What's going on here? I'm a little confused on this. Like, all that. And it doesn't mean that, again, that we don't enjoy Thunderbolts or we don't enjoy Superman or any of those films. God knows I love a lot of those films released this year. But in this, it's just kind of an incredible thing where if I'm going to the movie theaters, I know I'm spending $40 on tickets. We're buying the large thing of popcorn. We're buying the icy. We're buying the soda. We might get candy. And for 3.5 hours, I'm guaranteed just like something I've never seen put to screen this well and this well realized. And I'm going to have a good time getting lost in this world. I don't have to think of anything else about it outside of the movie. I don't have to think of, well, do I know this about this movie? I don't understand who this is. Like, no, it just brings you right in and it makes you part of this world. And I think that's what James Cameron has always done in a spectacular fashion in his filmography. I love Avatar, Fire and Ash. Obviously, you don't need my recommendation to be like, go see Avatar. If you're in on these movies, you're going to see it. And if you're just so burned out or jaded on these movies, you're just not going to see it. I hope what this video does is grow your appreciation for this world and what I love about this franchise. So thank you so much for indulging me on this. Thank you so much for indulging me in the year of 2025. I hope to be back soon. I will be having my best of 2025 list coming out real soon, as well as some overlooked films of 2025 and a review of The Testament of Anne Lee coming real soon. So make sure to subscribe to this channel for more. Thank you so much. Take care and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.